Of today's daf is Nazir daf Hamates, Nazir 39. We're going to start with the Mishnah Stam Nazirus and Yom. The basic Nazirus is 30 days. So why does it? We've already said this. Tosfos points out. Kfar Shaninu Zev Parakama. We already said that if you take a vow to be a Nazir, we assume as a baseline it's 30 days. So why is it repeating here? So since the next line of the Mishnah is going to tell us that if you cut your hair or if the bandits cut your hair, you lose 30 days. Tani nami stam nazir shloshim yom. For that reason, it repeats this phrase of Nazirus being 30 days. This idea of you cut your hair, you lose 30 days is not like somebody becomes tamei. Somebody becomes tamei has to start over. Cut your hair, you lose 30 days. But Tosfos says here, why do you lose 30 days? The reason why if you cut your hair, you lose 30 days, is not because you're losing something, but because you need something. Because your Nazirus requires, in order for you to finish your Nazirus, you need a tiglachas of a mitzvah. You need to cut your hair in a mitzvah. Because you need your hair to grow the minimum amount. It's not because we're punishing you, but you need, excuse me, we need the positive aspect of cutting your hair with a growth of 30 days. And Tosfos explains, we're talking about a case where they cut you on the last day, the day that you're filled your Nazirus. Because if they cut his hair prior to that, so it says bechaf so let's say they cut your hair on day 20 or more. Why does he have to lose everything? How's it going to go back and count again that which you already counted? So what it means there is it. This is what it's saying. You just have to it's just a growth until your hair has a 30-day growth. If they cut your hair day 20, you don't need to wait 50 days of Nazirus. You just need to wait till day 30 days from that day. So basically, there it's till day 50 because you have from day 20 you need 30 days. That it says I assume that's the read. So if we're talking about a Nazirus of 60 days, if they cut your hair on day 30, he doesn't lose anything because he's already on day 30. Because he's going to require 30 more days of hair, and that's the 30 days of growth. But if but if they cut him after his completed his 60 days, then he's going to need another 30 days because you need to have the mitzvah of cutting your hair. Fine. Back to the Mishnah. Let's say he cut his hair or robbers cut his hair. Then he has to wait 30 days. As Tosfos explains, because of the positive commandment. Nazir shekilech bein mezug bein matar or shesifsev koshu chayav. A Nazir cut his hair with scissors or a razor, or he just pulled it out with anything. He's liable because there he's in violation. Gemara is going to discuss that. Ibayu, who asks the Gemara, "Hi Mazia, this hair milatachas Rabbi or milael? Does it grow from the bottom, i.e., from the root, or milael, i.e., from the tip that's far away from the root?" Why do we care where it grows from? Gemara says, "I'll tell you why. When Nazir shall gachu listing, because we have a case of this that we're talking about in our Mishnah of the Nazir who the robbers cut his hair." And they left upon him enough hair to turn over from its head to its base. Now, This is in general the amount of a hair. We have different shiurim for hair, different places where we need to know hair in halacha. For example, if a red heifer, if it has two black hairs, or a boy and girl, they need to have two hairs. So this is the size of a hair, enough that if you bend it over, it reaches from the tip to the root. So we want to know, a Nazir, the robbers cut his hair, but they didn't cut all of it. They left some of his hair. So they left enough that it's considered a hair. Now, if you're going to say that the hair goes from the bottom, then Nazirus Hashakli, then they cut off the hair, because what happened was, when he took upon himself the vow of Nazirus, that was the hair that he was sanctifying. And then that hair grew taller, and that's what they cut off. So if you're going to say the hair grows from the bottom, then they remove that hair. And so now he's going to have to wait another 30 days. But if you're going to say that the hair grows from the top, well, if that's the case, the hair from the bottom is still there. It didn't grow out. So that hair which is sanctified, which is at the bottom, is still sanctified, and so that's still there. And so therefore, he doesn't have to wait another 30 days. So the Gemara is going to bring some examples, first of all, from the way they viewed the world, and then finally from a brisa, some attempts to prove this case. Tashma, so the Gemara says, let's talk about a case. Let's say you have a louse or a knit. Dekayim beikva debinte. It's at the root of the hair. It's a live knit at the root of the hair. And now, if you're going to say that it grows from the bottom, then since it starts off growing there, it should have moved up to the top. So from the fact that the knit's at the bottom, doesn't that prove it's not growing? The hair is not growing. Person, no, it still grows from the bottom. Because the knit is alive, nachas va'azil, it keeps going downward. That's where nachas va'azil keeps going downward. So it's not a proof. Mara says, well, Tashma, another attempt. Imba mesa, let's say you have a dead knit. Bereisha de binte, then you find that at the head of the tip of the hair, the other end of the hair. And if you want to say that the hair comes from that the hair grows from the tip, well, if that's the case, the ikva de binte biomakim. Well, if it's dead and it's growing from the tip, it should remain at the bottom. So doesn't this prove that the hair grows from the bottom, and that's why this dead knit is found at the top? So the Gemara says, no, hasam nami mishum deleis bachela serugis sriga va'azal. No, there, because since it's not alive, has no strength, it's just gravity is going to move it towards the bottom. That, as the Mefarish says, mishtamta me'azal klape reisha debinta. It just slips down. But really, it's possible that it means that it grows from the hair still. Tashma Gemara gives another attempt. Miburius de goyim. They take out the text kushim. The center is put in kushim. They didn't want to say goyim. So this was a special haircut that the idolaters would do. The basar de megadon. Now what they would do is they would braid their hair and almost like a dreadlocks. And after they braided their hair, rafia milatachas, it would weaken from below. So doesn't this prove that it's growing from below, and that's why it's weakening? Where it says, no, Hasam Nami, that's not a proof. Aidi Dikamta, he Mishechvad Rafia. Because he's leaning on it while he sleeps, therefore he weakens it. So it's not a proof that it's growing from the bottom. Another attempt, Tashma, Misikrata, the Misikrata Derapi Amra, Muatachas. So this is an attempt from the sikrata. This is the red dye, the red paint, the rapi amra that they what they do is they paint it on the sheep, and it gets loosened. After they paint it, it's tight, and eventually it loosens up like the dreadlocks. and it loosens up milatacha. So doesn't this prove that the hair is going from the bottom and then it loosens it up? And furthermore, the Gemara says, "Visu." We have a brisa, "Katzave saba dikneon chavarin." When the elders, and we're not talking about Jewish elders here, because Jewish elders wouldn't do this, when they dye their hair white, so because the Jewish men, the Gemara assumes are not allowed to dye their hair white because it's beged isha. So that's what the Shulchan Aruch says in Yoreh De'ah, Siman Kuf Pei Bet. That a man is not allowed to do it because of the prohibition of dressing like a woman. So when the elders would dye their hair white, we would see on the bottom of on top of our base, ikveim home, that their roots are so ikveim home. The bottom of their roots will remain connected, will remain black. So therefore, will remain white. And so therefore, we see from here that they're obviously growing from the bottom because the roots, even though they dyed the top black, the roots remain white. Shma mina. So first of all, I just want to pause for a second because some of us might be thinking as we read this Gemara, what is this? This is like chas v'shalom, but there's a little bit like chelm. Does a person grow from the shoulders or the head? I mean, obviously, it's the case that it grows from the roots. Obviously, we all know this, that hair grows from the roots. The tip of the hair is called the dead end. I mean, it's dead, it's not alive, so it's basic science. So how could they have been so off? I mean, obviously, they got the answer right, but what's even the hava mina? So to me, I was thinking, what we're really trying to say with the Nazir is, how do you measure spiritual growth? The Nazir is looking for spiritual growth. And spiritual growth is really imperceptible sometimes. It's like a hair. It's like a hair. You don't always see where the hair grows from. But ultimately, we're saying it grows from the roots. That the roots need to be strong. And if the roots are strong, then there'll be spiritual growth. Spiritual growth cannot happen like a flash in the pan. It has to be rooted. That's what the essence of spiritual growth has to be. It has to be rooted. And then we can grow spiritually. That's the message for the Nazir. That's a take-home message. Take it home to your Shabbos table tonight. You could say, why does the Gemara care where the hair grows from? To teach us this Musar Haskel, that spiritual growth is imperceptible, but it has to come from the roots. It's like a hair. Okay, so now, also want to say we know a hair. We know elsewhere in the Talmud that what is death like? Death is like taking a hair out of milk, something very soft and pleasant. Remember, we had that Gemara. So the Gemara says, the Tanya. So if you're saying their hair grows from the roots, that which we learned in the Brisa, Nazir shall go chulistim. Right, so you have what we learned in the Brisa. If you have a Nazirite who bandits cut his hair, and they turned over the hair. They left him. It's enough to. It's a shear. It's enough to bend it over to its roots, from the tip to the roots. Ain't no soser. It doesn't mess anything up. But if we're saying hair grows from the roots, then they cut off the original hair, and so he should have to be soser. If you cut off from the bottom, it is soser. So why do we say that it's not soser here? Gemara says, no, in this case, the case of the Brisa, they cut his hair after he completed his Nazirus. And so since he cut his hair after he completed his Nazirus, but before he fulfilled the mitzvah of bringing the karbanos and cutting his Nazirus, and so therefore he's not so ser. And why is that like? This is Rabbi Elazar Amar Ko Achar Malos Zayim Soser. Because Rabbi Eliezer's position, which we already had back on Daf Tes Zayim Base, it says anytime you've completed everything, then all you could be soser is 7 days. My time into Rabbi Eliezer. What's the reason why Rabbi Eliezer says that once you've completed the days of your Nazirus, you're only soser Zayim, you only mess up 7 days? First of all, Rabbi Eliezer says his law with respect to a Nazir became tamei from a dead body, that if it became tamei from a dead body after you completed your days of Nazirus, he says you don't have to start over, but you just have to lose 7 days in order to become purified. And according to his approach, we're going to say that just like if a Nazir became tamei, who normally would mess up everything, here he only has to wait 7 days. So too, by a Nazir whose hair was cut after the mulos, he only has to wait 7 days to fulfill the mitzvah of giluach. So that's what Rabbi Eliezer's position. So the Gemara asks, "My time, Rabbi Eliezer, what's the reason why Rabbi Eliezer says this halacha?" So the Gemara explains the reason why he says this halacha that if you cut your hair, if your hair was cut after your mulos, you only have to wait 7 days. He learns out tiglachas tahara from tiglachas tuma. So the tiglachas tahara, meaning to say that if your hair was cut off without tuma, meaning to say that the robbers cut his hair and not through tuma, from tiglachas tuma, from the case where he became tamei, and so therefore, under those circumstances, he has to wait 7 days before he could cut his hair. Just like if he became tamei after his malos, that he only has to wait 7 days. Shiva after glachas Torah. So too, if he didn't become tamei and the robbers cut his hair, he only has to wait 7 days. So that's how Rabbi Eliezer learns it. V'kimlu Rabbanan kol shivin yomin asiyar mazia kedela kufro sholikara. And the rabbis have the position that 7 days is all it takes for a hair to grow to be the requisite shear that you could bend it over and cut the hair. And that'll be the size of the hair. And so that's how Rabbi Eliezer learned it. So just to summarize this idea, the Gemara says the hair grows from the roots. So why, in that case, if they cut his hair, do we say that he doesn't mess it up? So we're saying Eno Soser Shloshim, because his false position of Rabbi Eliezer says it's Soser Shiva. It messes it up for 7 days, and he learns it from Tiglachas Tuma, that if you became Tameh after you finished your Nazirus, you only have to wait 7 days before cutting your hair. So too, here, if you didn't become tummy, you only have to wait 7 days, and 7 days is the minimum amount that takes for a hair to go to the minimum shear. So then our next line in our Mishnah was Nazir shegilech be'metar be'mezugo shesivsev kol shel chayev. A Nazir who cut his hair with a razor or scissors or any amount, he's liable. The Gemara says, Tan Rabbanan, tar, it says in the pasuk about a razor, Kol Yemei Neder Nizro, tar lo yavor al rosho. All the days of his Nazirus, he can't bring a razor on his head. So it says in the pasuk, tar, and tar. I only know that he can't cut his hair with a razor. Toish, Meirat, Sif, Kol Shuminai. And how do we know if he plucked it out with a tweezers, or if he did it with like a Meirat is with like a cream, removed his hair, or he just pulled it out with his fingers? How do we know that he's also in violation? Says the verse, Kadosh Yeh. The verse says, Kadosh Yeh, he needs to be holy. Gadel Peras Arosho. He lets the hair of his head grow. Gadel Peras Arosho. Divrei Rabbi Oshaya. And this teaches us that he cannot remove the hair with anything. And if he removes his hair with anything, he's violating this positive commandment because he didn't fulfill Gadel Pera. Whereas Rabbi Yonasan says, Tar, tar, Meira Tosh Sif Kolshu Potter. So he says, Rabbi Yonasan says, you're only liable if you cut your hair with a razor. But if you pluck it out or use some other method of getting it out, then we're going to say, under those circumstances, you're exempt. The Gemara says, but why could that be? Vaksiv Kadoshi, yeah. Doesn't it say you shall be holy? Doesn't that teach us, since it says Kadoshi, yeah, doesn't that teach us that you have to let your hair grow? And he removed his hair, so he's in violation of the positive commandment. So the Gemara explains, no, that's just teaching us that if you cut your hair with a razor, you're in violation not only of the negative commandment, but also of the positive commandment. Gemara says there's another brisa, Tanya Idach, alternative brisa. It says tar eli el tar. I only know that you're in violation of cutting your hair with a razor. Tar talash merit sifsef kol shemina. And how do we know if you cut it with a tweezers or cream or pluck it out with your fingers? How do I know you're also liable? Says the verse lo yavor al rosho. Says the verse that tar lo yavor al rosho. So from the fact that it says this lo yavor, nothing can pass over your head. So anytime you completely uproot the hair from its root, that's going to be considered like a tar, and you're in violation. It's called davar. So since it's including everything, why does it say razor if it includes everything? Because the reason is that if it would not have written tar, we wouldn't know that the final cutting of the hair, that when the Nazir completes his Naziris and he brings his carbon and he cuts his hair, we wouldn't have known that it needs to be with a razor. We wouldn't have known that. And so from this verse, we learn that the Nazir, when he cuts his hair at the end of his Naziris, he has to do it with a tar. And that's from the extra word. So the Gemara says, well, why do we need to learn it from there? Why don't we learn it from a mitzorah? Why don't we learn from the fact that the mitzorah cuts all his hair on the day that he becomes purified, and he does it with a razor, because it says, B'yom hashvi yigalech haskol saro, on daf mem. We learned that also. So why don't we say that just like the mitzorah cuts his hair with a razor, also the Nazir does? Where it says, Efshar, no, we can't learn it from the hair. Why? Why can't we learn it from the mitzorah? She'ein done it. Kal michamor, hachmir, because we're not going to learn a law about a cow, a lighter one, from a stricter one, to be strict upon him. Meaning to say, if the Torah was specific, gave some stringencies by a strict law, we can't learn also on a minor law. And so therefore, we're not going to learn from a mitzorah that a Nazir is obligated to shave with a razor, because the mitzorah is stricter than the Nazir, because the mitzorah is obligated to cut off all of his hairs, but the Nazir is only obligated to cut off the hairs of his head. And so therefore, the Torah has to mention tar, and by the prohibition of the Nazir. And so therefore, that's what we're going to learn also for Naziris. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Omer, Rabbi says we don't need to learn the Nazir that he has to do it from the tar, from that extra word. Rabbi says no, since the pasuk says you can't bring a tar on your head until the moos. That teaches us that when you do cut your hair, it needs to be with a tar. So the Gemara says, I don't understand. Why do you say tar is not extra? So doesn't that prove that it needs to be specifically with a tar? So the Gemara says, how can Rabbi say that the tar is not extra? From this we learn at the beginning of the brisa that everything is prohibited, not just with a tar. So he says, so that's to teach us that you're in violation of two prohibitions. One prohibition is lo yavor, other things, and in addition with a tar. And so therefore, that's why you have both of these prohibitions if you cut your hair with a tar. Okay, we'll stop here. And everybody should have a good Shabbos. We say to